Well, thanks, Caitlin. I think we'll go ahead and jump right in. I have just a single slide that we'll use to kind of illustrate the nature of the integration between SalesPad and Dynamics GP, and then we'll jump right into the application itself, and we'll do kind of an end-to-end walkthrough of the SalesPad product, kind of showing how we manage customers, push orders through, fulfill those orders, and move them on into shipping queues to ship out the door. So let me jump right in and go to actually the only slide I'm going to show today. And I'd like to start here because I think this slide does a nice job of, like I said, illustrating the nature of the integration between SalesPad and Dynamics GP. So we consider SalesPad to be an operational ERP tool. And what we mean by that is we're going to bolt directly onto Dynamics GP and provide a host of operational functions so that the accountants can stay in the accounting environment in Dynamics GP, but all of the people that are managing customers, entering orders, pushing those orders through fulfillment workflows, picking, packing, getting ready for shipping, they can all operate out of SalesPad. It's a real-time integration, so when you look up a customer, modify a customer record, enter an order, either in GP or SalesPad, it's immediately recognized in the other system. So we're communicating directly back and forth to the same SQL database. So SalesPad, like I said, is an operational ERP tool. We have a number of tools that not only handle customer management, order entry, but also warehouse, mobile sales requirements, payment processing. We also have an EDI connector, some manufacturing tools, as well as an API or a web portal to allow sort of B2B access, so term-based customers can actually enter orders online. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump right into the application. And like I said, the demo today is going to kind of be going over just a start to finish end-to-end process of looking up a customer, entering an order, and pushing it through our fulfillment workflows, and then actually shipping it out the door. And I think that does a nice job of really highlighting all of the benefits for distributors with SalesPad. So this first screen that you're seeing here, this is the SalesPad desktop application, and I have my customer search grid. And like I said, this is a direct integration to the same database, so all the customers you would see in GP, you're now seeing here. It's just kind of like a different interface to access the same data. So with our customer search grid, there's just a number of functions built in to make finding a record very simple, even if you have just partial bits and pieces of information. So for example, this field, the 8 filter boxes that you see at the top here, these are all wildcard searches, and so I can enter in a value like auto, for example, and that's going to query my customer database and find any customer that has the word auto. You can see that it doesn't necessarily have to start with auto, it just contains auto somewhere in it. So I've got Auto Glass, I've got Smith Auto, Jim's Auto World, and I can actually layer these filters on top of one another. So let's say, for example, in addition to knowing the customer has the word auto somewhere in the name, I also know it's a 989 area code. I can plug in 989, and then that filter will reduce the results to just show me the record that matches both criteria. So there you can see Jim's Auto World has auto in it and has a phone number that starts with 989. In addition to these wildcard search boxes, we also have what we call an auto filter row, and you can see we have this field above each column, and I can use this to filter my results as well. So I can plug in, maybe I know it's 123 Main Street, maybe I know it's in the state of Washington, and maybe I know, again, it's a 989 area code phone number. So I can plug that in and get down to that same record that way as well. So there's lots of flexibility, and like I said, this is nice because it doesn't require that you have complete pieces of information to find a customer. You can have partials and just enter in and kind of layer up the filters to get down to whoever you're looking for. In addition to the quick search options, SalesPad also allows you to have unlimited user-defined fields. And so if you go in to your search grid and pull up your column chooser, and this may have gone on another screen here, we have a column chooser that will allow you to access additional user-defined fields. And the user-defined fields you can drop and drag directly into your search grid and use that as additional criteria. And you can actually see those user-defined fields on the grid if you want to pull them out, or you can actually access them from the actual customer card or item card, whatever the case may be. You can also resort these columns. So if you want something repositioned on the search grid, you can simply move that over to the position you want. So maybe you start by searching for zip code. You can simply drop and drag that to the left and make that the first field that you look for. So there's lots of flexibility, and any changes that you make to any of these search grids are just reflected on your user interface. So it's not going to impact any of the global settings for any other users. Like I said, the search grid or the column chooser actually opened up on my second screen, so I'm going to drag that over and just kind of show you what that looks like. So when you have all of those additional user fields, if you wanted to drop and drag those in, you can simply do that. In this case, I have a field labeled channel, which is just tied to my marketing information about the customer that tells me, did they come from a webinar, did they come from a direct mail campaign, but that's a value that I'm tracking in an additional user field there. And if I want to get rid of that, I can get rid of that. I can clear my filters, so it's very flexible. The user-defined fields in this grid functionality that you see on the customer level is actually something that persists throughout SalesPad. So anytime you access a list, whether it be your items, your vendors, your POs, your sales documents, they're all going to display on a grid that looks very similar to this with all of the full complement of functions you just saw. The wildcard searches, the auto filter row, the column choosers, the ability to resort, resequence these columns to suit your preferences. There's always a little orange caret in the upper left-hand corner that you can also click on that allows you to export this to Excel. You can clear filters, you can restore default layout. So if you've added a number of fields and you want to kind of get back to square one, you can quickly restore that with that particular option there. So search grid functionality, that's something that we provide throughout SalesPad. Also the user-defined fields, which are great for clients that have to track additional attributes that they wouldn't necessarily be able to do natively with GP. So that's another advantage. Now I'm going to actually log into a customer, or actually just open up a customer card here. And first thing I want to point out is this pop-up note. So SalesPad supports these pop-up notes where we basically take the yellow Post-it in GP and we auto pop that on the customer card open. And that's a nice feature if you want to kind of confront the CSRs or the inside sales with any kind of high-level notes that they need to read before they dig into any specifics on the customer. Now, I'm going to go ahead and close out of that. The customer card, this kind of introduces another concept in SalesPad. So far we talked about easy searchability and user-defined fields to track attributes. Another big concept in SalesPad that makes our environment very nice for distributors is the idea that we bring an enormous amount of information to the surface and we try to present it in one location wherever and whenever possible within the software. And nowhere is that more evident than on the customer card. There's a lot of data here that's displaying, and so I'm going to kind of dissect this into 3 different sections. So this first window in the upper left-hand corner, this is typically where you're going to find your customers' properties like price level, payment terms, currency, primary bill to and ship to, and things like that. Now, we also do tooltips here where you could actually hover over the customer number, for example, and get the last 4 years of revenue, cost margin, freight revenue, and freight cost. And this is nice because, at a glance, you can just hover your mouse over the customer number and get a quick pulse on the customer to see how active they've been. Now, this feature here is typically reserved for an admin user, but just like I could access the user-defined fields on the customer search grid, you can also access all of those user fields here on the card. And so what admin users will typically do is set the card up to convey the information they want to convey to the end user. And so this will be kind of built out to a CSR function or inside sales staff function, and that those user-defined fields will kind of be preset by the admin. But just wanted to point out that those user fields can be accessed from the customer record as well. So that's kind of the first part of the customer card. Second part is this open sales document window, and this can be very useful to see any kind of pending activity sales related for the customer. And so what you're seeing is any order, invoice, quote that's in sort of a pending status. So a quote that hasn't converted to an order that hasn't transferred to an invoice that hasn't been posted. Anything active is going to be visible through this open sales document window. And just like that customer search grid, this is a grid, and so all of those functions apply here. For example, I can use my auto filter row to get down to an invoice, and then within invoice, maybe I know a particular day, so I can quickly drill down to the invoice I was looking for. I can see the batch it's currently sitting in, and I can actually drill directly into that document. All of these document numbers that you see underlined in that blue font are hyperlinks, and so I can quickly open up that invoice and see the line item detail, price, extended price, all of that information. Now, another thing I want to point out is that SalesPad works on this tabular layout. And so if you need to perform any multitask type activities, you can do that easily and have multiple objects open at the same time. So there you can see I'm toggling back and forth between the invoice and the customer card very simply. If I wanted to go back to my customer search grid and open up another customer record, I can quickly do that. So I can open up Adam Park, for example, here, and you can see I've got 2 customer records open at the same time, and I can easily navigate back and forth between the 2. So now the third part of the customer card is divided by this row of tabs below, and I have all of the tabs available turned on. A typical user environment may only have 3 or 4 tabs that would be relevant to their particular job, but I have everything turned on just so I can show it. And I always like to preface covering these tabs with that because it can be a little overwhelming to look at this and see all the data that you have at your fingertips, but you can definitely pare this back through security settings on a per user or per user group basis. And like I said, I'm not going to cover all of these. I'll hit on some of the highlights here that many of our clients actually use quite a bit. So the first thing is interactions. The interactions, this is kind of like our built-in CRM tool. And what this allows you to do is track all of the communication that you've had back and forth with a particular customer. And so you're seeing my notes, the priority level, subject, interaction type, when it started, last time it was updated, reminder, completed, and then if it was completed, it's indicated with a checkbox there. This can also be integrated with Microsoft Outlook. So we have a tool called SalesPad email add-in that essentially syncs this with your Outlook account so that inbound and outbound emails alike, you can set to auto sync with this grid here. And the big benefit of that is over time, if you have turnover or if an account manager changes hands, all of that communication, that history with the customer is centralized in the ERP environment, so you don't lose it in someone's inbox. So that's just a really big benefit. You can, of course, email directly out of SalesPad if you choose to use our email tool, but most clients are using something like Outlook, so we do sync with that. Another thing that you can do is you can actually add new tasks and interactions for follow-up. So I could maybe make a note that I need to make a sales call, and I can pick the contact that I'm going to reach out to. So maybe I'm contacting Bob Fitz here, and it's going to be a phone call. So you can actually categorize the type of interaction. So if you want to report on the number of emails you've had versus the number of phone calls, you can kind of categorize those. You have a full calendar scheduling tool here, so I can pick the time, duration. I can assign this to other users within SalesPad. This is a user-defined field I set up to indicate priority level. And you can have notes, and you also have a tool called Resources, which will allow you to attach any kind of documentation to this interaction that might be relevant. And once I hit OK on that, this will actually throw the event onto a calendar that we maintain internally called SalesPad Today. And so I can go into SalesPad Today and view this internal calendar and see all of the interactions that I need to follow up on, either in a monthly view, work week, daily view. And I can open those up. I can view them, mark them as complete if I've taken care of them, and have those pulled off my calendar as I go through the list. If you're an admin, you can also turn on other users to view. So if you want to look at other user calendars, you can turn those on to kind of see what everyone else is doing within the organization. So that's the interaction tab. Another thing that we do within SalesPad is we give you visibility of all of the contact addresses on the customer card. And so you can have effectively unlimited contact addresses built out here, and you can quickly at a glance see all of those addresses, and you've got the auto filter row, of course, to filter down by address, state, city, zip, whatever the case may be. And we also have a feature called fast ship to ordering, and if you enable this, any address that you have highlighted will automatically pull in as the ship to address on the sales document. So it kind of makes it easy to assign a ship to address to your orders as you're entering them. A couple other tabs, and then we'll jump right into order entry and kind of push an order through the fulfillment process. But just wanted to hit on AR briefly. So we do have an AR tab, and this will give you visibility into your aging buckets. So if you're a CSR or working in the AR department doing some collections activity, this can actually be a fairly effective tool to do that. So you can see average days to pay, you can see last statement, you can see all the aging buckets, whether or not they're current. You can actually drill into a balance inquiry, and this will show you the specific invoices tied to that balance total, and then you can drill into those invoices, and those will actually open up as tabs in the background here, and you can go in and email directly out of SalesPad. So if the customer said they didn't get a copy of this, you can actually go in and select your invoice and then email that directly from within SalesPad, and that opened up on my second screen. I'll pull that over, and so you can see you can have templates set to accompany these outbound emails, and you can send those directly from within SalesPad. You also have a note section, so if you want to record any kind of interaction specific to collections activity, for example, you can record those here. In this case, I can see I had a note there that a check run was going out on 12/1. So any of that, you can add a new note, if you've made a call, and that will just log that interaction, that AR specific interaction right there. Item history, this is also a nice inquiry that exists on the customer card, and this is going to pull out the item detail from all of your orders, invoices, quotes, and then allow you to quickly see, for example, how many of a specific item did this customer purchase from me over a specified period of time. And so you can see it starts by determining how many months of data you want to show. And so in this case, I've got 12 months of data showing. I'm just looking at invoices, but if I wanted to change the months, I could change the months. If I wanted to include quotes, orders, and returns, I could do that. But I'll just leave it as is. I'll run this, and then I can plug in an item number on my auto filter row, because again, this is a search grid, so I have that auto filter row function. And you can see that I've added a sum total box here at the bottom footer, and you do that just by right-clicking, and you can add mins, maxes. In this case, I'm using a sum here. And so in a matter of seconds, I was able to find out that this client has purchased 53 of these A100s over the last 12 months from me. So really fast inquiry tools. We also have a sales graph where you can kind of plot out your sales by quarter, by month, by year, view that all from the customer card. Couple last things, PayFabric, this is a payment integration that we have that allows you to process payments on a sales document or through our cash application screen. And this allows you to define default wallets for a customer and then actually pull those wallets up when you need to process a payment. And the nice thing about this tool is that this is actually an iframe that we're pulling in from PayFabric, and so all of the card details, transaction details are all stored in the PayFabric hosted environment, but we pull a view of that environment into SalesPad so that the PCI compliance scope is really pushed over to PayFabric to manage, but you still have access to the cards to process payments when you need it. So that's kind of a nice little feature that we've added in. Lastly, resources. So resources is a concept that persists throughout SalesPad. So I talked a little bit about resources on the interaction, but you'll see resources on customers, items, documents, and this is just giving you the ability to associate any kind of documentation or files with this particular record. So I have a little trifold file. It's just kind of a dummy file there, and I can access that and open it. We also have the ability to check off transfers, and what transfers does is allows you to automatically associate that as an attachment to a corresponding document. So for example, if you have a chemical that you're distributing and you have an MSDS document that you want to associate as a resource on the item card, anytime that item card is added to a sales document, we can automatically push that associated resource through as an attachment to that sales document. So that can happen automatically in the back end with this transfer option here. So I know that was a lot, but the customer card is really a powerful tool for distributors because it really just allows you to answer a lot of questions a customer might have, and all of this data is at your fingertips. I didn't go to another menu. I didn't go, navigate to another area. It's all right here in this sort of customer dashboard experience. So with that, we'll go ahead and transition and talk about order entry and then fulfillment and shipping. And so up at the top of the customer card, this is where we would initiate a sales document or sales transaction. And so you can see I've got a quote button, an order, invoice, and then a return. These buttons can be controlled independently from one another through security settings. So if you just want to grant order entry capability but not invoicing capability, for example, to a certain set of users, you can turn these off independent. If you have multiple doc IDs that you have turned on in GP and you want those visible to actually create within SalesPad, you can actually do that. And you can see I have just a number of quote IDs here. It's a demo environment, so I have a bunch of different scenarios. But typical client probably wouldn't have that many, but just wanted to point out that we do support multiple doc IDs in the SalesPad environment. So to initiate a new document, I'm just going to use this order for today. And so when I select order, this is going to create a blank order and pull all of the customer's defaults into the header of the document so that I can get right down to adding line items. So you can see the default warehouse, ship method, payment terms, sales rep, all of that is populated, so I can go ahead and start adding line items down below here. Now to add line items, we can simply hit this plus button, and that's the first line, and then once we key in the first one, we can just hit enter and continuing to do tab enter to add more items. Or we can also hit alt N, so we do support shortcut keys if you have clients that prefer not to use a mouse. But I'm going to go ahead and start adding a item SKU here, and I'm going to tab off even though I have just a partial match there. And want to point out when you are entering an item and you get a partial match and you tab off, it's automatically going to launch the sales inventory lookup screen. And this screen is not only good for giving you additional search criteria to kind of pare down your item list and get to the item you're looking for. It also gives you just tremendous insight into the inventory availability for a particular item. So in this case, I'm looking for anything that has 100 in it. But let's say I also knew it had the word break in it. I could plug in break, and now I've got my list kind of reduced to a smaller subset of items. And if it was the outer, there it is right there. So I'm using a combination of contains 100 and also has that string somewhere in the name. And so you can see that once I have the item that I'm looking for highlighted, all of these tabs begin to populate below with data. So the first tab is inventory. And so this is showing me all of the different sites that I stock this item at. So I've got 3 different sites that I would have this item at. In this case, the majority of my inventory is at my main warehouse, but you can see I'm actually over allocated on it. And if I want to drill in and see those specific allocations, I'll pull this over. I can actually pull up and view all of those different allocations just by drilling into that quantity total. Additionally, you can actually see if you're in multi-bin, if you have your warehouse, you can also drill into the specific bins and see what's on hand at those specific bin locations. So you can actually drill in at that level as well. If you have properties, you could actually go into your properties, and I'm actually going to look at a different item that I have some property information set up on, just so you can kind of see what that looks like. So this item, if you go into the properties, this is what is the item card in SalesPad, and you could have images, additional information, user-defined fields, so you can kind of build out a lot of content that might be useful during the order entry process and have that all visible here. So to add an item, you're just going to double-click, and that's going to load that in. You can see that the price was populated, so we support price level price as well as extended price. If you're using price level price, we also have about a half a dozen additional pricing tools that you can layer on top including a contract price, group pricing, special customer specific pricing, sales document promotions, item promotions. There's just a whole host of tools that we've added to price out for different scenarios within SalesPad, assuming that you're using the price level option, but we do have just an enormous amount of functionality there. And I won't go into all of the specifics there, but just wanted to mention that. So you can see this particular item, I did have enough on hand. It is available, so I should be able to go ahead and sell those and ship those. Now, if you have another item that you're actually out of stock, and I'm going to use that other item that I had looked up previously. Now, since this item is actually out of stock, you'll notice that the line item highlighted this orange color. So you can have your line item set to highlight a particular color to immediately flag the user that you're out of stock on it or you're over allocated on it, which is the case with this item. So I'm going to go ahead and back order this one and save this sales document. And I'm gonna push this through the workflow and kind of show you some of the things that we can do to kind of route this order through workflow to actually fulfill and process it. So now that I have this order saved, I've got one line item that's back ordered, one that I do have in stock that I can go ahead and fulfill. And so if I hit the release button, this is going to release it to the workflow that I have built out. And the workflow is going to evaluate a number of things as it progresses. And in this case, the first step, it's evaluating for back order quantities versus quantities that I have available to ship. And you can see that it identified that. And so it's recommending that I split the sales document so that I can back order the item I'm out of stock on, but go ahead and pick and pack and ship the item I do have stock on. And so what you're seeing here is order number 10113. They're recommending that I split it into a .1 version of that order for the item I do have in stock and a .2 version of that order for the item I don't have in stock. This is just an example of a workflow rule that I have set up. If I want to confirm that split, I can hit OK. You can also say do not split. But then the next message I see is the .1 version of that order that contained the item I did have. It automatically routed that to my picking queue. And the .2 version of that order with the item I didn't have in stock, it routed that to my back order queue automatically for me. So this is 10113.2 and 10113.1. So we pick up visibility of that movement through a tool we call Sales Monitor. So Sales Monitor is going to allow you to set up different stages in your fulfillment process and view those stages along with how many orders are in each one of those stages, the dollar value that represents, and then over here on the right, you actually have a detailed view of all of those orders. So this is my new order queue, these are in review, these are in back order, and there's that 10113.2 automatically routed to back order. And if I go down to my picking queue, we should see 10113.1, and there it is, automatically routed to my picking queue. This workflow that you're seeing here, this is strictly just something I have set up in my demo environment, but you have total control over how many steps there are, what the steps are called, what the buttons are labeled to release the document from one step to another, the rules that are evaluated in the back end. Do you want to split? Do you have a management review queue that you want to set up in case there is something that doesn't meet a certain margin, or maybe you have a large order item and you want management to approve it before you do any kind of fulfillment activity, or maybe there's a credit hold on a customer and you want to be able to enter the order but ultimately have a manager make the decision on whether or not they're going to fulfill that. Those are all things that you can do programmatically with workflow, and so workflow is really kind of intended to route orders automatically for you based on these rules, so that if you have, if you're currently printing out paper and putting it on someone's inbox on their desk and waiting for them to sign off and approve it, we can eliminate a lot of that and kind of absorb it through workflow. So I created an order, pushed it through, one ended up in back order, one ended up in pick. I'm going to come back to those in just a second, but I wanted to show just one other order scenario, another rule I have set up here. So if I have a large order, and my definition of a large order in this environment is $2,000, I do have another rule that will route that to management review. So you can see I've saved this order. It's $5,200, so it definitely meets the criteria. So when I release this, we'll get a message that you can see large order was evaluated, it's true, move it to the review queue. And so 10114 we'll see on refresh here, that is in the review queue. So that's another example of a workflow rule, evaluating a certain condition on an order and automatically routing it through your workflow to the appropriate queue. Now, in addition to routing it, you can have automatic email triggers or automatic print jobs run. So if when an order hits your review queue, you want a notification to be sent to the manager, we could automatically trigger that email. In this previous case where I had this order with a back ordered item, if you want your purchasing staff or your buyer to receive a notification, we can do that. If this document gets to the picking queue and you want a specific warehouse printer to print out a pick ticket, we can do that. So there's not only the rules to route, but there's also functions and things that can actually be done on the back end, like print jobs and notifications. So I'm gonna continue on with this order that I had entered and split and moved into the pick queue. And this is that washer that I had in stock, so it recognized that, moved it into pick. And I'm actually going to bring up a tool that we have called data collection. So far, everything that you've seen is functionality that's within our desktop application. This next application is an additional module that allows you to perform a lot of the warehouse management functions like pick, pack, PO receiving, inventory adjustments, stock counts, things of that nature. So I'm actually going to project my handheld device, and you'll see that up on the screen right now. And so if I wanted to pick that transaction that I generated, I could go into my picking transaction here. And this mobile device, I'm actually using an iPod Touch. So this can be run on iOS or a Windows-based platform for your mobile devices. And I'm actually using an iPod Touch with a Honeywell sled that incorporates the scanning functionality. So that's what you're seeing projecting on the screen now. So any of these fields you can scan to. So I can scan a value and doc number, item number, quantity, the bin I'm pulling it from, submit, and that completes the fulfillment. You also have the option to use a lookup, which you can navigate to with these little arrows here. And if you go to the lookup, the documents that you're viewing in that lookup can be set to a specific workflow queue. And so in this case, I have my mobile device pointed at my picking queue. And so in real time, as orders are entered and released into my workflow, I will pick those up on the mobile device right away. And so 10113.1, that order I entered and released, there it is on my mobile device right there. So if I want to pick that, I can go ahead and select that document, and then that's going to load my item list. And so there's that washer, 0 of 10 have been picked. I can go ahead and select that. And as far as the quantity goes, you can increment the quantity in one of three ways. You can tap on the quantity field, bring up your keypad, and enter it in that way. You can use these plus or minus keys to increment the quantity up or down. Or we have a feature called increment by scan, which would require that you scan the barcode of the product to increment the quantity by the unit of measure that you have on your sales document. In this case, it's an each. So those are really the options. I'm just going to go ahead and plug in quantity of 10, and then I'm going to select the bin that I picked those from, and I'm going to submit this. And so when I submit this, since that was the only item, I'm going to get this message, the document is fully picked. And so now, not only is the mobile device integrated to workflow to identify orders that are ready to pick, but it's also integrated with workflow to forward it to the next stage once that picking is complete. And so I'm going to refresh my sales monitor here. And I'm manually refreshing this, but you can have it refresh every 30 seconds. So in almost real time, as this activity is being performed and these documents are progressing, you'll be able to see that. And so you can see that 10113.1 is no longer in the picking queue. It automatically progressed to the shipping queue because I completed the fulfillment activity on my mobile device. So now that that's done, it automatically triggered the move to shipping for me. If I open this document, we have transparency back to what happened in the warehouse via the audit log of the sales document. So here's my sales document. You can see sales line quantity was 10, allocated quantity is 10, and now the fulfilled quantity matches the allocated quantity because we went ahead and did that on the mobile device. And if I want to look at that audit log, I can see at 4:37 they fulfilled 10 from the general stock bin of this item, and then immediately after, DC forwarded the document from pick to ship. So any activity performed in the warehouse is immediately written back to the audit record of the sales document. So you have a lot of transparency. So now that that document's in the shipping queue, we have another module called Ship Center that is a standalone shipping platform that integrates directly to different parcel providers such as UPS, USPS, FedEx, Purolator, and GSO. Those are the 5 parcel carriers that we integrate with. And what this will allow, what Ship Center allows you to do is process it. Process the order for shipping in its entirety within that single environment. You don't have to have World Ship or FedEx Ship Manager running in the background. It's just going to allow you to process it all out of that same environment. And so I'm going to bring that over to my screen here and kind of show you Ship Center. And so Ship Center is very similar to what you saw in data collection. It's integrated directly to the workflow, and you can point it at a specific batch. And so in my case, I'm pointing it at my shipping batch in my workflow queue. And so the moment an order progresses from pick to ship, I will identify that in my shipment monitor within Ship Center. And so here's order 10113.1 that I just picked and fulfilled. It's in my shipment monitor now. So to process this, I can simply double click that, open it up, and this is going to open up my shipment editing screen. And so to process this parcel, we have a couple different ways we can do that. We do have the ability to have an integrated USB scale. So if you just want to throw the parcel on the scale, capture the weight, finish the shipment, you can do that. Or we also have a pack process within Ship Center that allows you to select a package from a predefined schedule of packages. This is something that you set up. And so if you know your box sizes that you have available, you can preset those. And this is all touchscreen compatible, so you can just tap on the image of the box you're using, and that will load up the dimensional information as well as the padded weight for that particular box. And so you can see I picked my 9x9x9 for this. It's a padded weight of 2 pounds. And now I can go into my items, and this is going to show me my sales line item detail. And so I can see my item SKU, the quantity, and the weight. This is pulling in from the item shipping weight field in GP, and I can send this to my package, and that will update the weight accordingly. So it went from 2 to 7 pounds based on having 10 products that were ½ pound each. So now I have my weight, my dimension. I can go ahead and finish this shipment. And this will typically be set to automatically print from like a thermal printer, your shipping label. I have it set to print or actually save a label as a PDF. And so I'm going to save that on my other screen here and pull it up in just a second here so you can kind of see the label I just generated. I'll bring this over. So there's the label I just generated for this shipment. Like I said, that's typically going to be just automatically defaulted to a thermal printer to print out. But you can see that the package amount was totaled up, so 1046. We also have this field called shipment amount, which you can see is different by $5. And so within the settings in Ship Center, you can actually put in a flat padded amount or a percentage padding. In this case, I have a $5 shipping and handling fee that I throw on there. So this is the actual rate that's going to be written back to the sales document in SalesPad. Now, as far as the rate that writes back, independent of the padding here, this rate here, you have 2 options in Ship Center. You can have the list rate, which is effectively the retail prices for the carrier write back, or you can have your on-account rate written back. So if you want to pass on any negotiated savings that you have been able to achieve with your carriers, you can actually have the account rate written back. A couple other things, we have both write back and read mapping capabilities. So for example, if you have a client that prefers to have you ship third party via their account number, you could set up an account option field on the customer card along with an account number field on the customer card, have that automatically map in to this account option and account number field so that you don't have to key it in each time if you're shipping in a third party scenario. So the mapping capability is quite good out of Ship Center. So now that I've processed that shipment, again, just like data collection where we forwarded the document from pick to ship, we can forward from ship to, in my case, ready to invoice or an invoicing queue. So when I refreshed that, you can see 10113.1 moved from the shipping queue into the invoicing queue. And so if I open that up, there is a tracking number that was written back to the header of the document, so that automatically maps back. If you have multiple packages associated with one shipment, we would actually put those tracking numbers in a list format here, so you'd see all the tracking numbers here. And the header level tracking number is actually a hyperlink, so this will automatically launch whatever carrier tracking screen. So if it's FedEx or UPS, it will automatically launch that, so you can kind of see the progress of that shipment. So just to kind of recap, we entered an order from the customer card, we released it. The product that we did have in stock automatically moved to a picking queue. From the picking queue, we picked it to complete the fulfillment with our mobile device. That moved it to shipping. From shipping, we used Ship Center to process that, which moved it into the invoice queue. And now that it's in invoicing, if we wanted to do any kind of payment collection, we could do that. To process a payment, you can select the payment, the $0 total there. This will launch the payment window. We can do a new charge through our PayFabric tool, and this is going to launch the customer wallet. So there's the wallet. I can go ahead and process this shipment or process this payment, and if the card is good, valid, it will say it's approved, and it will write that transaction and indicate the payment has been captured here on the sales document. And now at this point, this is typically where we would transfer to invoice, and then GP would pretty much take over to do all the posting activity and commit that to the financials. But again, thinking of SalesPad as sort of this operational ERP tool, we were able to look up a customer, view all these great insights against that customer record, enter an order, push it out, have it mapped based on rules, do the fulfillment, do the shipment, and capture the payment and get it ready for invoice and posting. So that's why we kind of talk of ourselves as this operational ERP tool. It's all of that activity, and then once it's ready to push back to commit to the financials, that's where we have that, we allow, we don't do any posting. That's all going to be done out of the GP environment. So with that, we're coming up on about 15 minutes left in our session. That was really the bulk of everything we wanted to show, kind of the end-to-end walkthrough. Like I said, we saw 3 products: the desktop application, data collection, and then Ship Center at the end there. And those are kind of our 3 of our core products that a lot of our clients leverage to really manage all of that end-to-end distribution, all of the end-to-end distribution requirements. So with that, I'll pass it back to Caitlin so we can kind of do a little bit of a wrap up.
Sure, sounds good. Actually, I was going to say I have a couple questions, so I'll ask those first. One of the questions is, what versions of GP is SalesPad compatible with?
Yeah, great question. So I think we go back to, I believe it's GP 2010 is the earliest, and then I believe 2018 R2 I believe is in testing. I can get a confirmation on that, what's all through QA on the latest version, but we go back as early as GP 2010. And actually, let me see if I have a link here. Can we share links, Caitlin?
I was going to say we might be able in the chat option, or I can also include it in our follow-up email after the webinar today.
Yeah, so I've got compatibility updates and support. So the last one that was through QA testing was 2016 R2, and I believe the 2018 is currently in QA, but we go back as early as GP 2010 and all the way up to 2016 R2. 2018 is in QA right now. And here's that link. I can just send this link to you, Caitlin.
Okay, thank you. I will include that in our follow-up email then.
Okay.
Perfect. And then the other question I had is, well, can SalesPad be customized?
Yes, absolutely. And I would say that nearly every client engagement, there's some level of customization, whether it be a simple on-save script on the sales document or something more substantial where we're creating a new business object or user interface. That's definitely something we can do. We have a 20-person custom team that does nothing but scope out requirements that account for any kind of gaps that we may have in our software for a particular customer. But it's very, very common.
Okay. Okay, I'm just checking the question box again, and if there are no additional questions, I would like to thank you all for attending today's presentation, and thank you, Matt, for giving us this great overview of why distributors can't live without SalesPad. And if any later questions do come up, please feel free to reach out to us. And like I mentioned before, you will be seeing a follow-up email with a link to the recording and also the link that Matt was mentioning just a moment earlier. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.